Good afternoon. I'm Violet Johniker, the pastor of Brook Road United Methodist Church and Associate Director of Rockford Urban Ministries. I'm standing here today with clergy from Rockford in support of the Pretrial Fairness Act because we know it's going to help people, make our communities safer, and put love for neighbor into action. I care about our community, and the fact of the matter is that this legislation prioritizes public safety more than the way things work now, where people who pose a danger to someone else can pay their way out, while others who pose no risk at all are stuck in jail because they don't have enough money for bail. This law has been in the works for years, and it wasn't rushed or pushed through. It was crafted carefully with input from those most affected, and it prioritizes people's safety. I live here in Rockford, and I have 2 little kids. I would never advocate for something that I thought would put my family in danger. So when I tell you that I'm in favor of the Pretrial Fairness Act, ending money bond, and reducing the number of people in our jails, it's because I've studied this, and I know this is the right thing for my community and my state. I am so proud that Illinois is a leader on this issue, and someday when my kids read about this in the history books, I'll get to tell them that we were on the side of justice and righteousness. Even when some people used racist, fear-mongering tactics to try to keep money flowing out of neighborhoods and into a system that locks people in cages who pose no danger to the community. I support the Pretrial Fairness Act because of my faith, because of my family, and because it's the right thing for Illinois. And now I'm proud to introduce Reverend Dr. K. Edward Copeland from New Zion Baptist Church.
Hello, my name is K. Edward Copeland. I'm the pastor of New Zion Baptist Church here in Rockford. Been here for 21 years. I'm also a recovering attorney, having been a criminal defense attorney and part of the public defender's office in Kankakee County. The Bible says that righteousness and justice are the foundation of God's throne. That's Psalm 89, verse 14. And every major religious tradition recognizes truth and justice as major tenets. Most importantly, those same 2 values, truth and justice, are foundational to a functioning democracy. Right now, fear and ignorance are working against our democracy, and in particular, in this space called criminal justice. And that's why I support this act, because wealth-based jailing is fundamentally, morally, ethically, and philosophically wrong. Your freedom while you await trial should be based on community safety and not on your ability to pay. So as a political independent, as a former attorney, and as a clergy member, I'm concerned about some of the ways that people are starting to play political games with our truth, liberty, and justice to make political points, because it's usually the people who look like me who lose. Some of these forces are counting on fear and ignorance and the effectiveness of telling lies over and over and over again until they get ingrained into the psyche of our society. But I want to stand here today in support of the Pretrial Fairness Act because we're no longer willing to play any of these games. One of the disingenuous talking points that keeps being passed around is that somehow Illinois Democrats rammed through this legislation in an attempt to circumvent the democratic process. By saying this, opponents of this bill that was passed after years of study are really indicting the Illinois Supreme Court, because it was the Illinois Supreme Court that put together a commission to study this thing over 5 years ago. They took input from all over the state, took input from all of the stakeholders, most importantly from those who work in the domestic violence area. And they have created the Office of Statewide Pretrial Services that is specifically designed to make sure that the implementation of this act does not end in what everybody is saying it's going to end in, which is just criminals running loose in our society. First of all, I want to make a point of clarity. Most of the people in jail right now have been accused of a crime. They haven't been convicted of a crime. And at some point, innocent until proven guilty ought to be a reality in these yet-to-be United States. Those who are opposing this bill are basically indicting the whole federal criminal justice system, which does not have money bond right now. So if you really believe that money bond or not having money bond is the issue, then why do you keep referring people to the federal court system when they have not had it for decades? Basically, I just want to say that I trust the elected judges here in Winnebago County, those who literally right now are working to make sure that this act is implemented fairly and equitably, and that those who should not be released are not released. I trust those who are working in the Winnebago County court system, who, as we speak, are working with the statewide offices that are designed to make sure that this act is implemented with fidelity. And quite frankly, I even trust our state's attorney and the state's attorney's office that they're going to do the job that they have been created to do, which is not to let people who are dangerous to our society to roam free, but to actually present clear and compelling evidence of their danger to society before incarcerating them, before they've had an opportunity to have their day in court. The current posture that some are taking is, we just need more time. Well, we studied this from 2017 to now. The parties involved have been completely involved in every part of the process. And just because it's election season does not mean it's not time to do the hard work of implementing what has been crafted and what has been shepherded through the legislative process. Quite frankly, it's never the right time to do right if right is not what you want to do. So now is the time for those of us who want to do right to help our elected officials to do the right thing and implement this act. I'm going to move out the way now for the Reverend Dr. Matthew Johnson from the Unitarian Universalist Church of Rockford.
I'm the Reverend Dr. Matthew Johnson in the Unitarian Universalist Church, and I want to say a couple of things about the Pretrial Fairness Act and about the debate that we're having. I want to center the questions around human dignity, not political talking points, not agendas, but what supports human dignity of all of the folks who are involved in the system. We're talking about those who have suffered from an act of crime, as well as those who have been accused, but as Pastor Copeland said, not convicted. We're not talking about criminals who are serving a sentence after being convicted by a judge or in a jury. We're talking about people who've been accused by the police and prosecutors of doing a crime. Right? Police and prosecutors are not judges and juries. And I think we need to remember that these are folks who haven't been convicted. If they're wealthy, they're out among us right now. If they're poor, they're behind me. The question shouldn't be, are you wealthy or are you poor? Do you wait in jail until your trial? The question should be, are you a danger to somebody? Clearly. Are you likely to run away before your trial date? Or not? That's what this law does. We want to center the folks who are most affected. When folks spend time in jail before trial, before they've been convicted, their whole lives are deeply disrupted. And studies show very clearly they're less likely to be rehabilitated if they did commit a crime, to do the things they need to do in order to make amends to society and get back on the right track. Isn't that what this justice system is supposed to be about? Well, rather than punishment. And also for those who are survivors or victims from acts of crime. The new law has a ton of provisions to protect them. And so when folks say, oh, we should get rid of this, they're not thinking about survivors, and particularly domestic violence survivors, who worked hard to craft this bill to provide more protection to survivors. Right now, a wealthy person who commits a crime can be out on the street hours later without any judge or prosecutor making an assessment of whether might be lethal to the person who has survived their first attack. That changes under this bill. Doesn't matter how rich you are. If you're a danger to a specific person, you stay incarcerated until trial. So this bill is better for survivors. It's better for society. And if we stay focused on the human beings rather than on somebody's agenda, I think that people will realize that. And it's a big change. And big changes take work. They take effort. And so I hope that all the parties, and I know most of the parties already are, but I hope all the parties will engage in good faith to make the bill work, to make the small changes that might be needed, to clarify things that are unclear. There are commissions and teams and prosecutors and judges working on this right now, doing the important work of making it work well. So I hope folks will take a deep breath, and that everybody out there who's hearing all this debate will realize that this is hard, important work. Let's be serious and not frivolous, and let's do the work for the people who are in the system. Now I'd like to invite Dr. Dorothy Reddick with Rockford Urban Ministries to come on up. What do you think?
Good afternoon. Thank you for being here. This issue of pretrial fairness is imperative for the lives of individuals. It's not just about legislation, but it's about people. I had the opportunity to observe several court cases, and I saw people who were appearing from behind a camera via Zoom. I saw the judge ask individuals, how much income do you make? And I've heard individuals say, maybe $150 a week doing side jobs. And the judge said, okay, well, I'm going to assign a public defender. The public defender got up from the desk and walked up to the judge's podium. The judge handed him or her a packet of papers about the individual who was behind a video screen. The judge didn't introduce the public defender. They didn't say, Ms. Reddick, meet Mr. Brown. They had no discussion, and the individual looked through the packet of papers and made the best defense that they could based on things that other people had written, not even a meaningful opportunity to engage with law enforcement, with the lawyer. But the Pretrial Fairness Act changes that. And I was happy that I was able to attend the Winnebago County Public Safety and Judiciary Committee meeting back in May, when Chief Judge Lowry and the state's attorney, the public defender, even the circuit clerk's office was present. And they laid out how all of this would play out in our local court system. And one of the things I didn't understand, because I hadn't observed bond court, was that the public defender would be required to provide meaningful representation within the first 48 hours, face to face, not from a video screen, not even encountering. It can't be fair if a person has to be represented by someone they don't even know, who just is handed a packet and a decision is made about whether or not they have liberty or their liberty is taken away. Another thing I learned about bond court is that here in Winnebago County, everyone is assessed a bond. It doesn't matter if they are given an I bond, there is a money value attached to it. And if that person fails to comply with all the pre-trial punishments that are given to them, going to get assessments that they may or may not need, going to anger management that they may or may not need or may not be able to afford before the next time they appear in court. It's not fair and it's not just. But what is fair and what is just is this Pretrial Fairness Act. And one last thing I'd like to say is that for 40 days, I have been in contact with the Winnebago County board asking for the opportunity to come and present the Pretrial Fairness Act to all board members and bring in a policy expert who could speak. The first time I was asked if I could wait until the end of September when the budget passed. The next time it was, can you wait until November after the election, because we are not planning on taking any stance or voting on anything prior to that. Well, last week I heard the resolution that's being implemented by the John Sweeney, I believe is his name, county board member, to ask the state to roll back the time for the implementation. So I called Mr. Arena again and asked, could I roll up the time, move it forward for us to come do the presentation before the board, before you make a decision so that you can make an educated decision. I'm still waiting for that call. And I am a constituent here in Winnebago County. And all of this matters to me. Safety matters and people matter. But people first. Thank you.
Good afternoon, everyone. I want to first thank our members of clergy for standing up for this important legislation. I'm really honored to be here, standing here with you. I had a constituent who reached out to me last week and asked me, how am I able to support this legislation and be a man of faith? And as I thought about that question, it caused me to ask another question. How can I not support this legislation being a man of faith? The Pretrial Fairness Act goes beyond slogans. It goes beyond the direction of the political breeze, and it is designed to ensure that there's an even hand of justice, no matter your socioeconomic status in our community, no matter the color of your skin, and no matter where you live. Please remember that today, in the here and now, someone can commit murder and post bail and be right back out in the community. While at the same time, there are those who are considered to be low-risk defendants who remain in jail because they don't have the money. This happens because we are innocent until proven guilty, and our current system says, if you got the money, go live your life until we can prove your guilt. If you don't have the money, then you can sit tight in jail for months until we can prove your guilt. That's current law, and those are the concerning facts. The Illinois Supreme Court Commission of Pretrial Practices stated in their final report that detaining low-risk defendants is not only disruptive for the defendant, but also compromises public safety. That is why ending cash bail is so important. It puts the power to detain in the hands of the judges, who will make a decision based on the risk assessment of each case. So dangerous felons will no longer have the option to buy their way out of jail. And therefore, justice will no longer rely on the size of your pocketbook. Today is September 19th, and please know that we're not done with this legislation. We are yet having ongoing discussions of negotiation in good faith with stakeholders so that it is absolutely ready by January 1.